Hi, everyone. Welcome to our fourth virtual community session. Thank you for joining us here today. My name is Haley Isidore, and I'm a member of the communications team for KMK. If you've seen in the past, you know that we are doing this virtually because, well, the COVID-19 pandemic. Our plan is to hold one each month featuring a different department at KMK. Each of these are recorded and posted to our YouTube and Facebook pages, so I encourage you to check them out. And as Crystal had mentioned in the past, it is important for us that we are informing the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia. So with that, we will be holding these at different times on different days to see what works best for you. We will also issue a newsletter that features all of our departments the same week. And if you'd like to be on our distribution list for our newsletters, media releases, or other items, you can let us know through our email at info@mi'kmaqrights.com or check out our website at mi'kmaqrights.com and follow our contact us form. So this month, we will focus on an overview of our benefits department from Tracy Mingy. Tracy is our benefits lead, who joined our team July of last year. So at the end of her presentation, I will help her take questions from the audience through the chat feature. So without further ado, let me turn things over to Tracy.
Hi, everyone. Can you see me?
We cannot, Tracy.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I should start the video. There we go. Sorry about that. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tracy Mingy and the Benefits Officer at KMK. I'm just going to put up my presentation here. And just give me a few seconds. Is it up?
It is. So we have it up now, Tracy.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Sorry about that, everyone.
No worries.
Loving to learning new technology as we go. Here we go. So like Haley said, I am Tracy Mingy and I'm the benefits officer at KMK. I'm from Eskazoni First Nation and I have 20 plus years in community economic development, employment, and training. And I started in July of 2020 of last year. So I'll be sharing information on the benefits department and the benefits process at KMK. So the benefits department, as we review and examine projects happening in Nova Scotia, we are aware that it's important to our community members that they have opportunities to succeed and to provide for their families. And we focus on developing relationships with proponents early in the process. So we work to ensure meaningful Mi'kmaq inclusion in projects happening in Nova Scotia. We work with government and proponents on projects that provide benefits for all Assembly of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq communities. And we develop a positive relationship early with projects and partners that happen in Nova Scotia. So we develop many different types of agreements and relationships based on the type of project and what's appropriate. And the ultimate aim is to complete a benefits agreement with them. We work parallel to consultation. It happens at the same time, but at parallel. And both the Assembly and our Benefits Committee are working with proponents and companies to ensure that our Mi'kmaq rights and title are protected. As we review and examine projects happening in Nova Scotia, we are aware that it's important to our community members that they have opportunities to succeed and to provide for their families. And we focus on developing relationships with proponents early in the process. So like I said, there is a process and there's several steps that are followed when a benefits agreement is being developed, including the development of MOU that's used to outline priorities and topics that are expected to be included in any final benefits agreement. So the Assembly has a benefits committee, which is comprised of several chiefs and myself, the benefits officer. And the role is to meet with potential partners, review draft agreements, and make recommendations to the full Assembly. If the Assembly is considering any type of partnership, due diligence on that potential partner must be done, not only on their suitability as a partner, but also to determine if that partner is the best in the field. So the benefits process, there are several steps involved in the benefits process. The process focuses on addressing concerns with the proponent and determining how to better have a Mi'kmaq voice reflected in the project while maximizing Mi'kmaq participation and opportunities. Impacts to cultural resources, wildlife, fish, the environment, and potential archaeological resources are priority, and no financial discussion takes place until such time as the Assembly is satisfied with all those sections of the agreement. So the benefits process does not exist as a trade-off of our rights to the lands and resources of our unceded territory. It's paramount that any agreement we sign address impacts of projects and not create the perception that we've sold or jeopardize our rights. So there's about 6 steps that we go through. And step 1 and 2 are the introductory process. In the initial stages, we are often informed of work through our consultation department. While consultation is ongoing on an array of topics that include subjects like rights and title, land use, environmental concerns, archaeological concerns, and the like, during that process, discussion begins on the long-term economic outlook with our benefits department. So like I said before, consultation is a parallel but separate process. And during this stage, I will meet with proponent to explain the Assembly's process around developing a benefits agreement. So that includes an MOU framework and how the benefits committee is operated, and clearly outline the Assembly's expectations around inclusion in the project. So depending on how willing the proponent is to work with the Assembly, this process can be quick or it can take several weeks or even months to get to this stage. We attempt to coordinate schedules so the proponent can present their project to the Benefits Committee so that the organizations involved in employment and training can work with the benefits officer to create opportunities for our community members while negotiations are ongoing. So we look at what skills will be required so that we can plan for the opportunity that's coming up. So depending on the project, sometimes the chiefs of the Benefits Committee will also recommend that the proponent presents the full assembly. Step 3 is negotiations of the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding. After initial introductions and expectations are understood by both parties, the MOU is developed between the Assembly and the proponent. The MOU acts as the framework for the development of the final agreement. And the MOU outlines what will be discussed and provides capacity funding that provides the resources to allow for a fulsome discussion around the creation of the final agreement. So that would include costs associated with professional fees, legal fees, meeting costs, implementation costs, community information sessions, things like that. So it's important to note that the MOU is not a legally binding document, merely more comparable to a formalized handshake, acting as the basis for ongoing discussions around the creation of the upcoming legally binding final agreement. The MOU also does not limit the ability of the Assembly to continue ongoing consultation under the TOR, grant Assembly approval of the project, limit or impact inherent Mi'kmaq rights and title in Nova Scotia. During these negotiations, work is still being done to identify any immediate opportunities for employment and procurement that may exist. The MOU is fully reviewed by the Benefits Committee several times during its development and then goes to the full Assembly for approval. The chair of the Assembly is the signator of the MOU, all while consultation is still happening parallel to this process. So steps 4 and 5 is how we come to a final benefits agreement. So the benefits agreement, usually referred to as an impact benefits agreement, an IBA, but it's been known to have different titles depending on the scope of the project. They can be referred to as a CBA, a comprehensive benefits agreement, a good neighbors agreement, but they're all basically the same thing. So the benefits agreement outlines the impacts of the project, the commitment and responsibility of both parties, and how the Mi'kmaq will share in benefits of the operation through employment and economic development. Outside of employment and training, the agreement will have a focus on environmental concerns, archaeological issues, future consultation as required, and any other relevant items specific to the project. It's meant to act as a mitigation or compensation for impacts the project may have. It does not limit Mi'kmaq rights or title and is meant to be a mutually beneficial document. This process is quite extensive and can take well over a year to complete. It's important to begin negotiations early on so the IBA can be completed as the final approvals for the project are received and the project is started. The Benefits Committee and the Assembly provide input and feedback throughout the development of an IBA. Once it's completed and has undergone full final review, including legal review from both parties, the document will be presented to all chiefs and councils in each community. After a period to answer any questions or finalize any concerns, the document will be brought to the Assembly for a resolution to accept or reject the final benefits agreement. Again, consultation is still in the process. So step 6 is signing and post-signing. What happens after, if it's accepted and after it's signed. So after the IBA is signed, implementation begins. All the real work starts. This will involve various Mi'kmaq organizations and communities as the different aspects of the agreement are implemented. This could include METS, the Mi'kmaq Employment Training Secretariat, UINR or MCG, just to name a few. Benefits agreements will include provisions for one or more implementation committees to oversee the commitments that are outlined in the IBA and ensure that the Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq are realizing all the benefits and safeguards that were negotiated in the agreement. I know that was a lot of information, but to summarize, what is an MOU? Because that comes out often, that the chiefs have signed an MOU. So a MOU is the abbreviation for a memorandum of understanding. It's often the first step to be working with a proponent or organization. In our case, a MOU is not a legally binding agreement, but more simply a commitment to communicate and to work together to develop an IBA. So we put this chart together that explains what an MOU is and what it's not. So a MOU is a commitment to work together. It's mutually beneficial, outlines all our expectations and actions, and resources for research and ongoing consultation and negotiations with a proponent that includes chief involvement. It's not a legally binding agreement. It's not approval for the project, and it does not it's not a restriction of the rights or title or limit consultation. So what is an IBA? So each IBA or impact benefits agreement is different. An IBA is a legally binding agreement that's entered into after much discussion between the Assembly and a proponent. An IBA is a means of ensuring increased and meaningful Mi'kmaq participation in a project and outlines how this can be done, all the while ensuring that Mi'kmaq rights and title to the lands and resources of Nova Scotia are respected and continue to be protected. So again, what is it and what it is not? It is a formal contract and it outlines the benefits, including employment, procurement, training, social, environmental, and archaeological issues. It's not a limitation or ceding of our rights and title. We also go through a checklist in every one of our benefits agreements to make sure that these points are always considered. So the checklist is one, there's always the clause that there's non-derogation and protection of Aboriginal rights and title. There's a project description that is specific and limits the scope of the agreement. So that way a proponent cannot add extra things to the project without letting us know first. Identification that Crown consultation is separate and remains ongoing. So just because we are talking benefits with a proponent, there is still consultation happening through the consultation department. There's employment targets that include tracking. So the employment targets could be a percentage, it could be a number. It depends how the parties have agreed to get to that point. So in the tracking portion, we want to ensure that we know that the proponent, how they went out to, their opportunities were shared, how many people were interviewed, how many people were hired, things like that. And we want to ensure that they're not just the lower level, entry level positions in a project. We want management positions. We have a talented workforce in our Mi'kmaq communities that we want to match up with these potential projects. So there's a section that goes through training, education, and bursaries. We want to make sure that we're building capacity in our communities as well. Procurement opportunities that include tracking, just like the employment targets. Will there be any Mi'kmaq set-asides that we can share with communities, that they might have a company or a community member that's involved in a specific scope of work? Programming for business development, again, how we can make sure our businesses in our communities are able to take part in the project, and what we need to get them to a level that they'll consider our businesses to work with proponents. There's an MEKS and discussion of ongoing traditional use access. There's sections related to fisheries and archaeology, and we bring in resource experts in those fields, subject matter experts, to go through all those sections to make sure there's nothing that we're missing. Financial considerations for the project and for our involvement in the project. And implementation and oversight, including Mi'kmaq representation, and that includes being on implementation committee to make sure that the agreements are the honor of the agreements being met. So making sure that employment is happening, business development is happening, and any issues out of any section is being followed, and ongoing communication. So I know that was fairly quick, but understanding the economic need and balancing that with our environmental, our rights and title concerns, we know that together we will find the best way forward for the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. That was very informative. So now we will open it up for question and answers from those of you watching. If you're watching and you have a question, please send us a message in the chat window. And this all depends on the device you're using, so it's either in the top or on the bottom of your screen. Okay, we have our first question, Tracy.
Okay.
So the question is, I want a job with one of these companies. How do I get one?
Okay, there's a few different ways. You can reach out to me and I can get you in touch with the correct person. But we'll also be developing a database in the next few months to collect resumes so that we can quickly identify Mi'kmaq looking for employment and connect them with a certain company. So more information will be coming out in the next little while on how you can submit your resume to the database and it can be included.
Awesome. Okay, our next question is, if there are agreements in place with companies, then why don't community members get any money?
That's a good one. So agreements are made with the Mi'kmaq Nation and are more focused on getting our people working, creating opportunities for Mi'kmaq training and employment and building capacity, as well as looking at other environmental aspects. So we want to make sure that there's environmental monitors possibly in projects. Again, any apprentice trades that we can make sure that are involved in projects. If dollars are received through a benefits agreement, it's often used to cover costs for things like community meetings, info sessions, any employment training costs, and job fairs, or archaeological field work, for instance. We're always discussing the options like royalties with companies, which are fees from the resources that are used and extracted from our unceded territory. And while we've made some headway on this, we're hoping that eventually down the road, this is where the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia will see more direct impact or benefit, sorry, even if they're not working on the job site. So it's funny that we have benefits agreement, but why doesn't it go to community members? Community members, I want to work with them to get them employed at different projects and any businesses that are out there that want to expand. So I hope that answers that one. That was a tough one.
Awesome. Okay, we have another question, and it is, do these agreements mean that the chiefs are selling our rights and agree with the project? That is probably destroying our resources.
No. So the chiefs have no authority to sell rights. The rights are collectively held by the Mi'kmaq Nation. The chiefs will never agree with a project that destroys the resources. And they're very clear on that. So when we're having discussions with proponents, they're always insisting on environmental protections, good archaeological studies, good Mi'kmaq MEKS studies, which are Mi'kmaq ecological knowledge studies. And often benefits discussions don't begin until well after those issues have been addressed in the consultation process. So no, the chiefs are not selling our rights when I'm talking to a proponent about a project.
Okay, another question we have is, does KMKNO get money from our agreements with companies or projects?
Say that one more time.
Does KMKNO get money from our agreements with companies or projects?
Okay, in some cases, KMK does receive implementation dollars to support capacity building. That's the money they would receive. And it goes towards capacity building and Mi'kmaq inclusion and participation in their project. It includes dollars to allow appropriate organizations to be involved, like UINR or MCG, and communities to sit at the table to understand. And when I say at the table, to sit with the proponents to understand the materials and provide input and feedback on the project, including communications with the communities and membership. It gives us a voice on environmental issues and provides insight and monitoring of the commitments made in the IBA. So it's indirectly they get money, but it's to do the things that are outlined in the IBA. The money shouldn't have to come from us. It should come from the proponent to make sure that all the concerns of the Mi'kmaq Nation are addressed and that we cover them through communication. And we're using the expertise that we have in different organizations, like I said, UINR and MCG. That's just to name a few. I mean, there's so many others that, depending on the scope of work, that we would include in our discussions.
Great. Another question we have is, I'm a contractor who owns my own business and wants to work with one of the projects happening in Nova Scotia. What do I need to do to get work from them?
Okay. Depending on the project, it may vary, and we try to get businesses and individuals to know about the project early. So if there's any work that they have to do prior or early on, that they can get it done. So you can always provide me with your contact details and a bio of your company, the things that you're able to do, the scopes of work that you're able to do, so that I can share it with proponents. They're always asking questions about what our capacity is in the Mi'kmaq Nation. Who do we have that are electricians, or what businesses we have that they could potentially reach out to do some work. So we can also add, when I said we were doing a database, the database is going to be for employees, but it's also going to be a business database. So once that's set up, and we will be promoting that to all the communities. So once that's up, you can send me your information and we can include your information in the business database. Some projects have a direct link where they would like your business to register with their company, and you could do it that way. But I can always get that information to you if that's the case. Sometimes they have a link where they want you to register so that they can reach out to you separately or let you know of any requests for work.
Awesome. So I see one more question here, and if anyone has another question, we are more than happy to answer that. I'll go ahead with this last question.
Okay.
My community is not a part of KMKNO. Does that mean my community doesn't get any benefits?
You have hard questions today, don't you? But they're great questions. They are. They're really good questions. So it could really all depend on the agreement and when it was signed. While it may only be limited to the communities who were members of KMK or the assembly at the time of signing those agreements, those communities could still be represented in other ways. For example, they could be a member of MCG or UINR from the environmental side. But there's also, if there's a community who is wanting to work and is actively looking for a job or a procurement business opportunity, we would never disqualify them because of where they're from. We would always share their information with the proponent. And I also share any opportunities with every community's economic development officer or native employment officer. So we would never exclude anybody, any community member that's not part of KMK or the assembly.
That's awesome. Okay, well, I think that just about wraps up our questions here.
I know I can fast, so.
So thank you guys again for joining here today. And thank you so much, Tracy, for your time and your presentation. If you have any questions you'd like to ask after we close or are watching the recording and have questions, please feel free to email them to us. And we look forward to seeing you at our next session in May.
Thank you.
Thanks again.